Masters of Modern. I am your host, Alex Kessler, here with my co-host, Marshall James. Welcome to the podcast. As always, people might know you from behind the camera, and now you're in front of the camera, but you've also been here a few times.
That's me. This is my face.
This is for the non-audio listeners. You can find out what Marshall looks like. And really, we should be calling today I think we said the Ancestors of Artisan podcast, both as two of the founders of the format, but also we're dads
the fathers
now, so
of the format.
Ancestors, fathers of children and formats. But Dominaria United came out. For those who don't know, Artisan is a version of playing Commander or competitive. There's 1v1 on Arena. That's where the name came from, where you play with... it's the exact same rules as Commander, same ban list as Commander, but you are playing with legendary creatures from that have to be legend. They have to be uncommon. Every card in the format has to be common and uncommon, legendary creature included. And so that's the format. It kind of barrels down.
It's no rares. Yeah, no rares magic. It's magic that anybody can afford to play, and we've talked about it a bunch on the show, but it's pretty exciting if you miss the way Commander used to feel before WotC learned about it and started printing stuff for it and making the format significantly more streamlined. It definitely has a bit more of the battle cruisery feel of 2010 Commander. So if you've never played Commander back in the day, in the early days when it was just a thing whispered about at conventions and spread on message boards, I highly recommend you give Artisan a try. It's definitely a lot more interesting than it maybe sounds. Rares are not the most exciting cards in Magic.
It allows you to play with a lot of like the uncommons that have been built around to be like draft format archetype defining cards, and it creates some really cool engines that like would be too slow possibly for regular Commander. You get to play here. Before we jump too far into it, please first off hit that like and subscribe button. It's super appreciated, and we do want to hear below which of the different Commander decks from these different artisans that we talk about, which ones you are most excited to hear. We're also in the middle of Unstable season. Unstable. We're in the middle of the preview season for Unfinity. We just last week we did our preview card. We did it both on the MMcast TikTok, the MMcast Shorts on this channel, as well as the MMcast Instagram. That's where we previewed it all. So make sure, hey, thank you Wizards again for giving us the free preview card. But we also want to hear any cards you want us to talk about we'll do a MMcast review of Unfinity. If not next week, because I think we might be doing Warhammer next week, the week after that. So please comment below with which cards you're interested in, which one do you want us to talk about, specifically kind of in vibes of what we talked about last week on the podcast, which was like, what happens if all of these types of cards from these supplemental sets get added to Modern? Which of the cards from Unfinity would you like to see be a Modern card? We'd love to hear those comments below, and that make sure that we hit up cards you want to hear about. And of course, hit that like and subscribe button. Super appreciated. And thank you to our sponsors, both Channel Fireball, where you can buy one of the best places to get buy cards, as well as get a bunch of really cool Commander, etc., any format you want content, all on channelfireball.com, and as well as altersleeves.com, where you can get really cool different custom sleeves. We have a custom sleeve for the podcast coming out next month in October, which will reveal it. Maybe it'll be revealed here. If not, it'll be revealed on the next podcast, and you can get it through our Patreon. And more information will come out soon. So stay tuned. We'll be releasing a short on the YouTube channel at a minimum, as well as next week's episode. We'll break it down a little bit more. But big shout out to Altersleeves as well. And if you use the code the MMcast, you can get discount plus check out some of our cool, the ones that we liked. The Altersleeves we liked. All right, we're talking about Artisan, as you mentioned. One thing you did point out is it's inexpensive. I basically foiled out my Vega the Watcher Artisan deck, other than like a few cards. And even though it's playing literally Force of Will and Wasteland, I think the entire deck itself cost $130.
Yeah, and you could and the cool thing is Force of Will is good, but you don't need it. It's a nice to have, but not a required. And Wasteland is another nice to have, but because the big power playing rare lands of the format, like Gaia's Cradle and Volrath Stronghold and stuff, are rare, there's less of a need for that. And besides, you can play things like Tech Edge. You can get your Tech Edge back in there. You can play Ghost Quarter back in there. So
Yeah, it was more. I was more pointing out like most of the cards in this format, even if you play with like some of the stuff now, like uncommon is weird. Bazaar of Baghdad is a legal card in this format. You don't need it,
Yeah,
as you kind of
Sylvan
don't need it for
Library
regular
and
Commander.
Demonic Tutor, and Sylvan
Right.
Library and
So
Demonic
there's
Tutor are
definitely
both
some
legal.
wild cards, and if you want to be more a part of this format, there is a link in the description for the Discord for Artisan. So they're actually a pretty thriving community, a bunch of different people
Definitely,
talking
yeah.
about deck lists. So you can definitely jump in there as well. But we're going to be talking on a card by card basis because one of the cool things about Dominaria United is that there are a lot of uncommon legends. Like that's kind of the big has always been the big stopgap in the last year between New Capenna adding the 3-color legends for all the shards. The Baldur's Gate adding a bunch of new combos for backgrounds, and now Dominaria United adding, I think you said 26 different options.
There's 25. There's 25.
25.
We got 20 in the main set, and then we got a cycle of 5 allies in the Legends Retold box topper thing. So that added, so there's 3 more for each ally pair and 2 more for each enemy pair. And I mean, this has been just a huge year for this format as far as cards, legends. Like the number of legends possible has almost doubled this year alone, and there's just tons of different deck styles that are valid now. And there were a lot of very exciting commanders that came out in this set, so I'm excited to talk about them.
Yeah, both a bunch of like generically good ones as well as a few like direct build me rounds for strategies that didn't exist, and so we'll go through it and also talk about some of the key strategies you want to think about if you're thinking about building an artisan deck. And to start us off, we're going to do this alphabetically. We're going with Arin, Benalia's Ruin, white, black, legendary creature, Phyrexian human menace. This creature can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. Black, white, tap it, sacrifice another creature, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. He is a 3/3.
So one thing that it might be worth suggesting is, as we talk about them, we talk about maybe it and the other one in its color pair because they often are very complementary. And
we can do it. We can do it by color pair. Let me just
so
put it alphabetical. So the other black and white one is Ellis Ilkor, Sadistic Pilgrim, white-black, legendary creature, Phyrexian Core Cleric. Death Touch, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, gain 1 life. Whenever another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. This one, I think, is, to me, the more exciting black-white edition. Already, Aristocrat decks is probably one of the I would say it's deck 0 of the format. Like, if you're entering this format, one of the not weaknesses of Artisan, but one of the board state you run into is that it becomes a very clogged up board. There's not a lot of big threats, and there's a lot of really strong removal. And so ways to kill your opponents through evasive threats, one of those being life drain that you get from an aristocrat strategy, are really strong. Plus, Soul Sister cards often are a lot of uncommon and commons as well. So there's a lot of really big play here.
Yeah, Aristocrats really lends itself well to the format. Yeah, because the board stalls happen a lot, and because all the Aristocrat triggers and a lot of the best sacrifice outlets have all been uncommon or common.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, the very first Artisan deck I ever built before we even were trying to push it as a format was a Slimefoot Artisan or a Slimefoot Aristocrat deck. And yeah, I think the printing of Ellis Ilkor, I think Ellis is probably the strongest Orzhov aristocrat build around commander for the format now. It kind of just does exactly what you want. I mean, it's sort of like Zula. It's basically Zulaport Cutthroat, right? But it's like Zulaport Cutthroat plus a Johnny's Presence, I guess, tagged onto a creature with Death Touch, so you can also play around with, putting a Viridian Longbow or something on it, so you have repeatable.
It's a Soul Sister, right? Like it's Soul Warden meets Zulaport Cutthroat, which is like exactly what those decks want. I think like
it only triggers off your creatures. That's the reason I was.
Oh, sure. The debate for me would be for the Black White Aristocrats deck commander is: do you want Ellis, which is your like win con in your command zone, or do you want a token maker, right? Like that would be the one alternative, is that you can go in a slightly alternative direction where you have all these strategies in the deck while having, just the token go wide strategy at the forefront as a way to like kind of gum up the board. And there are better, of course, in the command zone black-white token makers. Both some of the partner ones have that as well as some of just the regular printed ones. But I do agree that this does offer a really cool. This is probably the best one, and of course, the 2-mana creature is always going to be really powerful in the command zone. So this definitely offers a lot there.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting that all those guys you're talking about would be in your 99. So if you build Orzhov Aristocrats and you can test out, let's have Ellis in the command zone this time. Okay, next time I'm going to try like, was it Prava and that big elf Nadir? Like those are a good partner pair. Or I've seen some folks doing like Thalise, the medium that makes a bunch of spirit tokens, or even Ellen Harbreeze, the busybody, plus Agent of the Iron Throne is a good combo for that. Aaron, like you said, is less exciting.
So the black white artisan aristocrats deck I've had up until this point was Prava and Tormod.
Oh yeah. Tormod's fun too. There's been a lot of fun toys in this set and in the Warhammer 40K for Tormod. So.
Oh yeah, Tormod's so cool.
Yeah,
I love that card. But yes, to your point, like I think that you like. It just depends on what you want to lean into more as your primary versus secondary strategy. If your primary strategy is aristocrats though, and not go wide tokens, then LS Ilkor is going to be easily one of the best options. As a secondary one, you do have Aaron Benalia's Ruin, which is maybe less aristocratsy and more just a go wide strategy value commander. I do think of the two, Aaron is worse than maybe a lot of options that are out there. I think that's one thing that's going to be interesting as we go through this, is that we are now in a world where in Artisan there's some redundancy. Some of the colors don't have them. Like we'll get to blue red, and both the blue reds are super important because any of the commanders that were like dungeon themed commanders out of the original the original Dungeons and Dragons set out of in the Forgotten Realms.
Oh yeah,
are basically unplayable, right? They're not the most playable cards. Or there's, I think the blue-red one for that is a D20s. Whenever you roll a D20, do something, and there's like 3 total common uncommons that roll a D20. But black-white is not as much in need of different commander options. So So the next color combo is blue-white that we're going to do, and that's Raph the Weatherlight Stalwart, Tobias Doomed Conqueror, and Tura Kennerud Sky Knight. And there's actually, I think, some pretty powerful ones. So Raph is a blue-white 1/3 human wizard legendary creature. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may tap 2 untapped creatures you control. If you do, draw a card. And then 3 white creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain vigilance until end of turn. Tobias Doom Conqueror is 2 white-blue human soldier with flash. When Tobias Doom Conqueror dies, for each non-token creature you controlled that died this turn, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. And then Tura Kennerud Sky Knight is 2 white-blue flying. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token 3/3. First off, that ability just from someone who has played against the Jeskai version of that lets you sack those spirits is just like very good.
Oh yeah, Kaikar. Yeah.
So getting the young pyromancer on a 3/3 flyer is like really, really strong. With Tobias getting like a strategy to be able to like protect the creatures you control, or like the one thing that I think with Tobias that hurts it is like board wipes aren't very common in this format. So you're almost more going to want to play this as a blue-white aristocrats deck to me.
Yeah.
Where like you sack your board, you play him, and then you sack him, and then you get a bunch of 2/2 zombies, and then the things you sacrifice have death triggers or other stuff that you play with. One that I also had is like, and I don't know, like any type of like reanimation capabilities or rebuy that you can get out of the cards. There's not a lot in blue-white that are common.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I would have liked if Tobias had been in Esper colors, so that you could have played him around with some of those like black instants that are like when target creature dies this turn, return to the battlefield. So you could have maybe done some sweet Tobias loops. So yeah, I think he's definitely the least interesting of these 3. But Raph and Tura together both play in the same space, and I think they definitely show up in each other's 99.
Sure.
And it's hard to say which one I think is more exciting. I mean, I'm a sucker for card draw. So, like, Raph being a cheap commander that's like, hey, how would you like for all of your instants and sorceries to cantrip? But they really feed into one another, right? Raph wants a lot of creatures, and Tura's like, hey, I'll get you some creatures. And I guess the
So
kind of
some
the
of that
neat
is
thing.
sorry. So
No,
some
go
of that
ahead.
is that they're like these uncommons, the ones that are in the actual Dominaria United set are draft strategies, right? Like they're
Right.
the flagship draft strategies of those colors. So like the same way that the black and the white ones both worked well together because you have a one creature's die, you have your opponents lose life, and then you have a sack outlet in the other one. Here you have
Totally.
the creature that makes the tokens you need to tap for the other one, both when you cast instants and sorceries.
Yeah.
I do think that like in this format specifically, being able to draw cards from just out of the command zone is extremely powerful. Like I have the blue white deck. I do have like so I have currently now I have 3 main artisan decks. I had a 4th. I got rid of it. It was a mono red artifact one, and it's Vega the Watcher, which is really awesome. It's probably my favorite. It's the Tormod black white token one I just mentioned, and then I just built Torwaki, which we'll talk about in a second. And like Vega's ability to just draw a lot of cards in the command zone is one of the reasons that deck is one of the more powerful artisan decks I own. And Raph has a very similar ability that's easier. Like Vega, I have to play with like flashback and foretell cards and rebound cards. Raph just play with 2 creatures and instants and sorceries.
and he can tap himself, so he's like halfway there.
Yeah.
And then I also love that he has also your sort of win condition built into him. Um, so like you definitely in his deck with Tura, you want to play a lot of those instants and sorceries that make you creature tokens, and then you're just going to be ripping through your deck, making a bunch of spirits and soldiers, and then once you have like a critical mass, you can just pump some mana into Raph every turn, poke in for a bunch of damage, and then your guys obviously gives vigilance, so your guys are then able to tap later to still draw cards. Like it's just a very sweet synergy between the two of them.
Oh yeah, and I think like maybe we're playing a game of which is the best one of the color combos in this review episode because we're reviewing. I think it's Raph. I mean, like especially because
Yeah.
Raph lets you draw into Tura. I do think Tura lets you do a different strategy than you get to do with Raph. That like there are reasons to build Tura instead, but more often than not, I would build Raph over Tura for sure.
Yeah.
I think there is a cool deck to do with Tobias that's just totally different, right? The like sack a bunch of things, make a bunch of almost like a blue-white aristocrats deck does sound interesting. You just have to figure out the reason how you're going to drain your opponents and like how you're going to win with all the tokens you're making. But I do think blue has the ability. It has like flight, right? You can give all your things flying. There's different ways you can play around. That I think could be really cool in a deck with Tobias. That I would love to see someone try and break that. I think like the difference between a Tur and a Raph deck though are pretty minimal. Anything else before we go to blue black?
No, that does it.
So in blue black, I will say blue black has the first commander in Artisan that might get us to have a serious conversation of banning a card. Now we're nowhere near that. This is the first time I've like actually considered it, but we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
So the 3 commanders are Ramirez, DPHO, Pillager. Ramirez now has 3 different cards with his name on it, which is dope. Rona,
fan
Shield
favorite.
Faithful. Oh yeah, I need a. Okay, so all I want from Ixal. Let's just talk about Ramirez. We'll do each one individually first.
Yeah. So Ramirez de Pietro.
Human pirate 4/3. When Ramirez de Pietro Pillager enters the battlefield, you lose 2 life and create 2 treasure tokens. Whenever one or more pirates you control deal combat damage to a player, exile the top card of that player's library. You may cast the card for as long as it remains exiled. First off, I love this card just because it gives you a really cool strategy, right? Like it makes treasure tokens. We now have a blue-black treasure token commander in the format. You have the like get to play stuff off of other people's cards using a pirate tribal version of the format. Like it offers like 4 different strategies of build around, which I think like is exactly what Artisan needs. Is like commanders that like point you in directions and pay you off for going in those directions. What I was going to say earlier is all I want from Ixalan, and it has nothing to do with Artisan. I just really want a vehicle 5-color pirate ship that lets you play it in the command zone.
5-color pirate ship.
I want a white, blue, black, red, green pirate ship vehicle that has the text, you may play this from your command zone. I would be fine if it was Grixis. It would be okay. I would be willing to deal with that, but 5-color would be dope too. There's
Well,
not
so
any
far
Wyatt
pirates
pirates,
only are
so
in.
yeah,
Then
I
there
guess
aren't any
Grixis is
green
fine.
pirates. Yeah.
Fine.
I mean, I'd be
fine.
cool. I hope we get another, like, I appreciate Admiral Beckett Brass for who she is, but I would be interested to see another Grixis pirate lord, because we've gotten so many cool, like Ramirez. We already kind of know this effect. This effect is very similar to what Britches does, and Britches and Malcolm are already a very strong pairing in this format. So Ramirez goes right in there. It's
Well,
interesting that Ramirez doesn't
blue black
he
versus
sorry
red
he
black.
goes right in that strategy.
Yeah.
But this way you get access to the few black. Now the unfortunate thing is most of the good black pirates are rare.
Well, there's the one that makes treasures is not, and that's maybe one of the best ones.
Oh, the ruthless knave.
No,
The
no,
one
no.
lets you
Whenever a
like.
creature dies, make a treasure. I'm looking it up.
Oh, pitiless plunderer. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right there. Ruthless knave also makes treasures. He's a sack outlet that makes treasures, but he's nowhere near pitiless plunderer level.
Right. I mean, that card specifically, but there's even like Direfleet Hoarder. When it dies, make a treasure. There's like a few decent options here. Kitesail Freebooter, which is like not the best for commander formats, but
Yeah, it's mostly because Izzet was the focus of all that pirate card dump that happened in Commander Legends, and that's where a lot of the commander playable non-rare pirates showed up. But not to take away from Ramirez DiPietro, I'm a huge fan of his, and I like that he's really cheap when you think about the fact that he refunds the treasure right away. I wish he let you play the lands. I mean, what kind of pillager doesn't let you play lands? But and because it says you may cast the card as long as it remains exiled, you've got those two treasures. And so if your opponents aren't playing blue and black, you've got to be really shrewd or play a lot more treasure makers if you want to be able to cast the things you're pillaging off of players.
This is a card I'm going to play. I'm playing a lot of artifact mana fixing, right? Like Arcade Signet, any of the even some of the bad ones that could tap for good mana are like things that I'm considering. Yeah, Ramirez DiPietro does a lot of really cool build around stuff. I'm pretty excited by it. The next card is Rona, Shieldred's Faithful, 1 blue, black, legendary creature, human wizard, 3/4. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 1 life. You may cast Rona, Shieldred's Faithful from your graveyard by discarding 2 cards in addition to paying its other costs. So this one and the next one, Vohar, Vidalian, Desecrator, blue, black, legendary creature, Phyrexian Merfolk Wizard, 1/2, tap it to draw a card, then discard a card. If you discarded an instant or sorcery this turn, this way each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. And then you may pay 2 to sacrifice it to cast target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard this turn. If that spell would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. Activate this only as a sorcery. So, by the way, that's the one of the two. That's the one that is making. Well, we'll talk about things about banlist in a second. But Rona Shieldred's Faithful, as far as a card goes, it's a cool strategy. I don't know if there's a Spells Matter blue-black specific option really out there, and it does have some cool kind of what I'm doing with Vega, where you're self-milling and then playing stuff from your graveyard, discard outlet, reanimator strategies, which are cool with her.
I dig that she gives both of these commanders are exciting. Aside from their broken potential, both of them are exciting in that they give blue-black Madness a good discard outlet in the command zone, and Madness is some of the more interesting mechanics in Artisan, because, like you were talking about earlier, drawing cards is really powerful. It's even more powerful here in Artisan because you're nickel and diming your opponents. There aren't any of these huge, a board wipe can oftentimes be like a 12 for 1 or a 20 for 1. You don't get those that often in Artisan. So in Artisan, a lot of times you're getting your 2 for 1, you're getting a 3 for 1. And so anytime you can put yourself up cards in Artisan, it really feels good. And so Madness is a great way to do that. And so before, so Vohar is the big elephant in the room, and I'm excited just because I love the idea of a legendary Merfolk looter.
Sure. That's so sick. This card
I
is
love
awesome.
that type line.
It's like a mini Snapcaster Mage. It's a mini Jace's Vryn Prodigy. It's a mini Merfolk Looter Legendary. I love this card a lot from a card perspective. The banning potential is that this might this might get us to pull the trigger on ban Demonic Consultation. So Demonic Consultation and Lab Maniac are both legal in the format. 6 mana with it, if you get to 6 mana, which in this format is not hard to do, and you draw a Demonic Consultation or you tutor it, and there are tutors that are legal in the format, like Demonic Tutor, you just win the game if someone doesn't have the ability to remove the things that you have going for you. And so
now
and
the nice thing
is
you
want to do it all in one turn, which you don't have to.
Yeah. So yeah, the big thing is, again, we play with the same ban list as Commander, and I personally don't feel like we will need to, because essentially what we're talking about, anytime you Demonic Consultation, we're in CDH territory, right? Like nobody plays Demonic Consultation in regular Commander, right? No one says my deck is a 7 if their deck has Demonic Consultation in it. Like Demonic Consultation is one of those signpost I'm playing CDH. And so I think there are a lot of people who are kind of excited about the idea that there are some powerful CDH level combos that are available in Artisan. And I think part of the reason why I'm so hyped on pushing Artisan is that Commander is here to stay. It's Magic's most popular format, and Magic is here to stay. So over the long stretch of time, we are going to have tens of thousands, 20 of thousands of cards in Commander, and Commander will need to start subdividing, just like Magic has subdivided into Modern and Legacy and Pioneer. And so Artisan is, to me, just makes logical sense as a nice subdivision of Commander. And so I think it makes sense that that subdivision would then also have a competitive end and a more casual end. And I'm kind of okay with the competitive end having Demonic Consultation Labman.
The two slight differences, and this is me wanting to be like more upfront and honest about how we would handle bannings, and if there are cards we're looking at to ban, then partially because we're a smaller format, so you don't have the like financial ramifications that you do in the world of actual Commander. First off, I don't think this format should ever have a ban list that has cards taken off that are legal in regular Commander. That's one thing that I'm a firm believer in, because of the fact that it makes it no longer backwards compatible. I think one of the mistakes as a big Oathbreaker fan that Oathbreaker made was unbanning Primeval Titan and some other cards, because yes, in Oathbreaker it's fine, but now if I have an Oathbreaker deck, I can't just like add cards to it or I can't like take cards out to make my Oathbreaker deck competitive. I have to like also switch cards out and have a sideboard, etc. And what I want to be is like, you can always play an Artisan deck against a regular Commander deck. You can always walk into any Commander game, and if not everyone has Artisan, because it is a much smaller format, you can always be like, okay, I'm going to try punching above my belt, and see.
And I've definitely won with some Artisan decks. If you're, an Artisan deck is on equivalent or stronger power level than a precon. So if you're playing against a bunch of people who want to test out their precons, you can play your Artisan deck, and you're definitely hanging in there.
And we were just talking like ACDH comparable lists are possible in this format. There are a lot of very powerful cards, and that deck will do well in a regular format. So that's the two things. The one reason I'm more worried about Demonic Consultation than others is that specifically this format has a win condition drought is the word I'm going to use for it. They're much farther and fewer between. So the incentive in blue-black to have a way to be able to close out the game is higher to use something like a Demonic Consultation on Labman, even at lower power levels, versus in regular Commander, there are infinite combos. There's an infinite number of easy ways that are fun and different than what CDH is doing to try and win the game in a blue-black deck or in any Commander deck.
Yeah, that's fair.
They are a little farther and fewer between. So, and right now, format's not big enough. We're getting the testing data to prove that this would be a problem, but this does put a bigger red flag on a card that when the format was created, I already had a red flag on, and the community, as it grows, can help kind of communicate and see if this is an issue that's really happening. And we're nowhere close to that.
Yeah. So in the meantime, I'm just excited about Vohar. Like I opened a foil stained glass Vohar, and I'm excited just to build some sweet blue-black madness and play a bunch of the untapped target creature effects so I can loot a bunch of times. I mean, I might play a Lab Man, but I won't play a Demonic Consultation because I don't care to win that way. But I'm just really I love madness. It's one of my favorite mechanics, and so being able to just draw a card and then cast a spell for cheap just feels so good.
Yeah, and I think between these two, because for the like throwbacks to legendary creatures, it's such a different strategy. I think Vohar is definitely the better of the two, and it does everything that Rona does, other than like Rona kind of wants you to do a lose life, gain life, like more of a like almost
Rona,
blue black storm list.
Rona makes you want to play more blue black storm. Yeah, and it's cool that she wants you to play blue black storm, and she like black has some of the better board wipes in the format, and she's not afraid to be board wiped because you can then cast her again. Like her commander cost will only ever get to discard 2 cards, and blue black can turn discarding 2 cards into actually a good thing. So I don't think she's bad.
I think she is the most different of the 2-color limited format commanders that we've reviewed so far, right? Like,
yeah,
I think that like Tura is more similar to Raph than Rona is to Vohar, because I also think Rona and Vohar are not in the same deck. That's the other thing. Is like they
probably not.
Limited, I can see why they would be, because they trigger off of similar things. But I am doing something very different in Vohar, where I think I could see myself.
I think I could see myself putting Rona in Vohar, but not the other way around. Because like it's cool that you can pitch Rona to Vohar's discard, and then later cast her out of the yard. And if like I'm playing a bunch of Madness cards, then I discard those cards to cast Rona.
Both and both. Like Vohar's base ability is like Merfolk Looter, Snapcaster Mage, right? Like they're one of the.
I mean, Vohar probably goes into every blue black deck no matter what in the format, because he's just like so dang good.
It's possible Vohar goes in every blue black deck in every format.
Yeah.
Every version of Commander, right? Like it's pretty good.
I'm not opposed to it. Yeah, it's a good one. I love Merfolk Looter, so give me the legendary one.
I have Jace Prince Prodigy in a lot of decks, and Vohar is very comparable to Jace Prince Prodigy.
Yeah,
and maybe better.
All right, shall we move on to Rakdos?
Black red. All right, so we have 3 here. The first one, which we'll start with the legendary. The Legends redo of Torwaki the Younger, 3 black red, a legendary creature, human archer, reach lifelink. If another source you control will deal non-combat damage to a permanent or player, it deals that much damage +1 to that permanent or player instead. And then whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell, Torwaki the Younger deals 2 damage to any target. They are a 3/3. I've already built this deck. It's sick.
Yeah, this is
below.
I'm just gonna say this is my pick for the best, or at least it. Well, there's one other that may be up there, but this is probably pushing us for the best new legend out of the set. Because wow, like he slices, dices, gouges, and rips. He does it all, right? And like I love a legend that makes me feel really, really good about playing Lightning Bolt in my commander deck. Like Lightning Bolt becomes 4 and 2, split how you like, and gain 2 life. Like so much for just 1 red.
I do think best is it's so during building it, one thing that's really interesting is the like card advantage rebuying ability spells that you want to recast again and again in black red are much farther and fewer between than say blue red or blue black, right? It's like a weird, by not having blue, you do lose a lot of the things you would naturally assume would go here. That being said, there's a lot of cool stuff. You get retrace cards, you get some rebound stuff. You can give Torwaki Infect, and it does a lot of really silly things.
Yeah. You can give him Death Touch.
Yep. It's definitely a cool deck. He's also 5 mana, right? Like that is not a thing to not remember. But
I guess I should have said
you can do here.
I guess I should have said he's maybe not best. You're probably right, but it's maybe more. He's definitely in the top 3 ones I'm most excited about. Had you not called dibs, I was already like brewing this guy up. But
I had already like bought all the cards.
Yeah.
The deck is here. I'm holding it right now in this
nice. The thing is,
brought to you by Ultra Pro Fibblethip. Where's Fibblethip deck box?
The other thing is, the other thing is, Torwaki is going to be a beast in this format. Part of the reason why I said that he's maybe the best is because, as you said, there aren't a lot of board wipes, and Torwaki starts turning a lot of cards that aren't quite board wipes into board wipes. there are a bunch of spells that do just like do 1 damage to each of your opponents, or each of your opponent's creatures, and turning it into a one-sided pyroclasm wipes a lot of boards in Artisan. Artisan is much more tend to have weenie swarms, because every color can field a bunch of common and uncommon weenies that are valuable. And so Torwalkie turning, I don't know, raid the festivities or whatever, that's like deal 1 damage to everything your opponent controls, turning it into a one-side pyroclasm is just savage, or like electrickery overloaded. And then on top of that, he's also doing targeted shocks. So, like I'm going to pyroclasm your side of the board, and I'm also going to point the shock at your commander. So now your commander has 4 damage on it. It dies. And that's just like Torwalkie being Torwalkie.
Oh yeah, I think Torwalkie does a lot of really cool stuff, and I think there's also multiple ways to build it. Like I'm doing the whenever you cast an instance from sorcery, do 1 damage to every opponent type of cards, right? Versus other ways that you can do it. So
so you're doing like gutter snipes.
But yes, I built gutter snipe deck, but you could do you can just do like a black red control deck that's just using red black damage spells that are good. The next card is Lagomos, Hand of the Hatred. 1 black red human shaman 1/3. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 2/1 red elemental creature token with trample and haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. You may tap it to search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Activate this only if you have had 5 or more creatures die this turn. This is another I want to sack my whole board commander, but I do think I think this one's weird in how you probably build it. I think it's cooler than people are giving it credit for, but clunky. And I don't hate that in this format where you can kind of look at different ways to do things. And it's not tapped, search your library for a card. You don't have to sacrifice anything. It's just if 5 or more creatures died this turn of anyone's, not just yours. So there's definitely some cool things you can do with Lagomos, I think, that let you kind of
and Lagomos is already going to add 1. If you don't need to cast that spell this turn, the elemental will kill itself at the beginning of your end step. So you can tap Lagomos in your end step if 4 other creatures died. And so it is interesting that Lagomos actually, the legends retold don't necessarily play well with the main set guys, but this is a place where it maybe could, because Lagomos loves seeing Torwalkie blowing people up and can then once a turn, after Torwalkie has shot down a bunch of dudes or pyroclasmed a bunch of dudes away, then Lagomos just taps to go get, do you need a card draw spell to refill your hand? Do you need another board wipe? What do you need? Do you want to go get that Gorgon head to give him death touch? What are we trying to get?
The other thing with Lagomos that I like too is it's not at it is at instant speed. You tap it in, so it can happen during your opponent's combat step.
So that's interesting.
So if you play a Carter, in a Carter deck, who is another commander, black red, and probably one of my favorite I've seen of the black red commanders, or if you're just playing with goad effects and just forcing your opponents to attack each other and have their creatures die against their attack steps that they're going through, you get to benefit on it every single time by just tutoring for a spell and then getting the next goad effect or getting a thing that lets you blink Carter.
Ooh, yeah, you can definitely chain goad effects together with Lagomos. That's pretty sweet.
So that's one of the things I thought was really cool at the deck. I think people are underestimating that ability in this format, but I think in regular Commander, everyone's thought that it was just another one of the sack 4 creatures and tutor or reanimated thing, and I'm no. You other people's creatures die. How do you kill those? And the next one, I think actually black red got heater after heater here, which is great because I think that's a strategy that always kind of needs expansion. Is Garnet Bloodfist of Kelp, 1 black red legendary creature, human berserker. Whenever another creature you control dies, draw a card if it was attacking. Otherwise, Garnet the Bloodfist deals 1 damage to each opponent. So this one definitely encourages you to be aggressive. Encourages you to play with a bunch of stuff that just dies easily, but you can bring back the Bloodghasts of the world or the reassembling skeletons of the world. I had Garna in limited. I got to play with her during during limited for format, and she is so hard to play against because you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate that she's sort of an aristocrat, but she does also encourage you to just get aggressive. And I've seen there's been a lot of chatter on the Discord about maybe, even though she is not a goblin, she may be the best Rakdos goblin commander in the format because she does the things goblins want to do. Like, if she was a goblin and that was the text printed on her, she would definitely be the best Rakdos goblin commander. And so the fact that she's a human, she doesn't care if they're goblins, but like, dragon fodder now can draw you 2 cards, you know. Like, all these things that make tokens can suddenly be like, I'm just going to suicide them into you. I'm going to play a bunch of some anthem effects and stuff, but I'm just going for the throat. And I like both of her sides. Like, obviously the draw card one is better, so she encourages you really to attack because you don't want to just necessarily just sit around. But it is cool that you can just sit around and play Rakdos aristocrats. But there are better commanders for just Rakdos aristocrats in the format if that's what you want to do. But this sort of attack dose aristocrats she might be the best one.
It really, really negative. It creates negative incentives for people to block. Right? They don't want to block, because then you get to draw cards, but then they have to block because if they don't, then everyone takes 1 damage regardless. So it puts them in a weird position, which is, I think, good for this format. Now, and as long as this deck can keep kind of rolling the steam out and keep having board states, so stuff like Lagomos or any of the like make a elemental once a turn kind of effects like are really good here because they're like sacrificial lambs that you can play. They can die. Who cares? You just got to draw cards, or you get to keep building an aggressive board state. I do think, like, as an aggro strategy, it does create the exact incentives something like that needs. Where, because the one problem that strategy normally has is like, I'm a block.
Yeah.
We trade,
so then it makes any of these like saboteur type creatures like the Black Ninjas or like Audacious Thief, like creatures that want to connect, makes them so much better, like you said, because if your opponent like blocks them and kills them, then you are going to get to draw a card anyway. But if they don't block them, then you get to like throat slit them or something, something like that. So
I do think both Garnet and Lagomos, like, maybe are both better in a Carter deck versus them being the stars of their own deck. Though I do like the idea of goblins, and I do like the idea of Lagomos doing its own thing. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just adding to one of the good strategies that Blackred has in the format. We're going into of these 2, which is the better one?
I think they do different enough things that it's hard to say.
I agree. It's like really flat as a category. I think Torwaki is like better than both, but other than that.
All right. So yeah. Okay, so our Legends Retold one is General Marholt Elsdragon, who's 2 red-green for a 4/4 elf warrior. Whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, it gets +3/+3 until end of turn for each creature blocking it. Now, when I first saw this one, I thought, boring. This is boring as hell. General Mulhart Elsdragon in the original set had Rampage, which is like an even worse version of this ability.
Right.
But then somebody on the Discord, and I wish I had their name up here, but they pointed out how really good he is with lure effects. Something like Taunting Elf, which is just a 1 mana 0/1 elf that all creatures must block it if able. If you attack an opponent and they block, that elf will become like a 21/21 or a 24/24. And then if you like give it trample, like, it can get out of hand, and your taunting elf will probably survive after wiping their board. So it in a way, any of your lure creatures become sort of like Breaker of Armies, which is a really strong top end threat in this format.
Yeah, so Commander Mechanic had me on their YouTube channel at the beginning of September, and they where I like broke down Artisan and what the format is, because they had a deck tech for this commander specifically. And
yes, I think it was Commander Mechanic who pointed out that.
All the video is linked below. You can go check that out, and then on that video, there's a deck list for their General Marholt Elsdragon deck, and it's really cool. Like, they do a really good breakdown on like what it can do, and like, yeah, like one of the key features to this format is you as a builder want to build your decks thinking of ways that you can break past very gummed up board states. And it ends up that where I agree with that, like General Marholt and like regular Commander isn't going to be that exciting because those board states don't really exist. You maybe get one player board wipes and can do some attacking with your 4-drop. But in this format where like making it so that everyone if you want to attack a player with all your creatures, usually one lore creature that they have to block that one. You wipe their board and you get to do 12 damage to them. That's a big swing in this format.
Yeah. It's actually interesting that he is a creature that gets a lot better in the Artisan format because of a feature of the Artisan format, not just because everything is depowered.
Yep. The next two ones are Radha, Coalition Warlord, which is the first domain legend, which I have thoughts on. 2 red green elf warrior legendary creature 3/3 domain. When Radha, Coalition Warlord becomes tapped, another target creature you control gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of basic land among lands you control. And then Rulik Mons, War in Chief, 1 red green legendary creature Goblin 3/3 menace. When Rulik Mons, War in Chief attacks, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield tapped. If you didn't put a card on the battlefield this way, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token. And he has menace. I don't know if I said he has menace. Yeah. I think like putting domain on legendary creatures is like a frustrating move for me.
Yeah.
Which like is cool if like you want. I'm assuming there is a like domain legendary creatures matter combo commander deck that someone is excited to build, or standard strategy that they were excited to encourage. The fact that like in this format at best, like I don't even think does green or red have good like this land has basic land type beyond its own.
So there's not many. There's Nylea's Presence is the big one. It's a cantripping land enchantment that gives enchanted land all basic land types.
Okay, so that's the combo. That's
the good card. So the interesting thing is we got one of these domain legends in each of green's color pairs because green domain is meant to be a limited draftable format, and so there's going to be a red-green one, a white-green one, a black-green one, and a blue-green one. I was really bummed that we didn't get a 5-color uncommon legend. It didn't even have to be 5 colors across the top, but like if it had between its casting cost and activated ability, because we've seen things like Fusion Elemental, which is like boring, but like Dragon Soul Knight was a cool, like part of a cool cycle of cards from the original Alara that had like a Wooburg activation in the thing, and that would have finally given the format a 5-color legend that all of these domain legends would have been fun to put in. So yeah, the unfortunate thing also for Radha is that the payoff isn't that great. Like she doesn't give trample or menace.
I would say that's true of all of the domain ones, other than like reread the black-green one.
Yeah, all the domain legends are pretty weak. I think Zar Ojanen is maybe the best one, quote unquote.
It gives +1/+1 counter to a creature with toughness less than domain.
To each creature.
Okay.
So
still,
but we'll get to it in a second. But they're all pretty bad. And Radha is maybe the worst because she feels like she should have given some sort of evasion on top of the pump, and she just doesn't. And so if you're not doing tricks, she just taps to give +2/+2 to a creature.
And at best it's +5/+5. So it's not even like
it's not even exciting. So boo Radha. Now Rulik Mons is more interesting, but I'm still a bit disappointed. It's cool that he's hard to block so that you don't feel so bad about trying to attack with him, but he's not quote unquote hard to block really in Artisan. Menace is not as great an ability in Artisan for all the reasons we've been talking about, because of all the board stalls. People have a lot of tokens to throw in front of your guys. It also annoys me that Rulik, like if you look at the top card of your deck, if it's a land, you get to put it on the battlefield, which is sweet. If it's not a land, there's no put it into your graveyard or put it onto the bottom of your deck. Like if it's like just a card you don't want, tough. You get to make a goblin and that's it.
Sure.
And you know what the top card of your deck is.
I will say, like, there's now a red-green goblin commander.
But there already was.
There was.
Like we had Grumgully. Like Grumgully the Generous is super strong.
Never mind. This card is just trash. I hate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I forgot Grumgully existed. I have no positive opinions on this card.
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, if it milled yourself or it did something like extra that you could take advantage of, but like 4 mana, maybe make a 1/1 token, maybe put a land into play is not good in this format.
No. Or at least give him haste on top of all this so that you're going to get. But like he comes down, you spend 4 mana for just a 3/3 that does nothing.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah, if it had like a Titan effect where it was entered the battlefield to do this and when it attacks, also would like it, but it doesn't do anything. General Marholt, Else Dragon, easy victor of the red-green contest. And
yeah. All right, so we go on to Selesnya. Our box topper is Jasmine Boreal of the 7, 1 green-white for a 2/4 human druid that has tap, add green-white, spend this mana only to cast creature spells with no abilities. And she also says creatures you control with no abilities cannot be blocked by creatures with abilities.
So this card's really cool. It's weird. Like, it's going to do one thing. It's not exciting.
You play green-white vanilla beatdown.
Yeah, and it's going to do really good. There's probably some cool stuff you can do, because like one thing you can do is like make her an Aura Enchantress style deck that like anything that you want to deal combat damage with, like Snake Skin or the ones that you draw cards or whatever, because
some of them it's the aura that does the thing, so it doesn't turn off. But some of them say if it says this creature gains and then puts quotes, then it will turn off Jasmine's ability. But yeah, there are effects like I think she would be a good for like Gaia's Anthem is uncommon now. There's a bunch of Anthem effects. Noble Purpose is an uncommon that gives pseudo lifelink, but it doesn't actually give lifelink, but it gives a trigger like lifelink to all of your creatures, which seems really great if all your creatures can't be blocked. So you're going to be like, oh, I'll swing in, I'll gain 12 life. My creatures can't be blocked.
And tokens count. Like, you don't get to use her first ability, but the second ability, and like, as we said, she breaks parity. So if you want to do a green-white token deck, this is going to be maybe one of the best ways to be able to do damage and get around people's creatures that are in play. In fact, to the extent that there are enough commanders that do that from this format, I do think that it turns the format a little bit on its head in the truism of like, I'm gonna not have a lot to do over a bunch of turns. Like, a lot of these kind of break that, which is a really good thing for the format. And yeah, to your point, there's ways to like add things to where, as long as you don't give the tokens the abilities, but you have things trigger on damage globally, or you put +1/+1 counters on them, etc. You can get pretty far with her, and yeah, you just play a bunch of like good vanilla,
like Garruk's Gorehorn. Garruk's Gorehorn is a 7/3 with no abilities. Like, let's do it.
There's gonna be some cool. There's because there's like the Balot that's a 3 mana 4/5. Like, there's like just like find the best undercosted green-white vanilla creatures, throw them all in here, and then and some good token makers and some good things that trigger on combat damage or attack triggers, and
you'll be great.
The next one is Queen Alela. So these are the 2 draft ones. So the first one, let's talk about Zara Ojadin, because you brought it up, and I want to get to these domain ones. Domain, it's a 3 green-white cat warrior 4/4. We do now have a cat. That is, I guess, one thing I didn't think of. There is a cat green-white commander, which I don't know if we had that before. We may have had it. Whenever Zar Ojanen, Scion of Afrava, becomes tapped, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control with toughness less than the number of basic land types among lands you control. So if you are playing this in just straight green-white and you're not doing shenanigans, you get to make sure all of your creatures are X3s.
Yes.
And then put +1/+1 counters on thing, which there are benefits to spreading out some +1/+1 counters.
Yes. This is the first legendary cat at uncommon.
There you go.
I was just checking that out for you. So this is the most powerful, quote unquote, of the domain ones, because a +1/+1 counter is a permanent buff, and it's each creature with toughness less than the number of basic land types. So it turns all of your X1s into X2s every time it gets tapped. Now, we're going to get to the so between so two interesting things. Between Radha and Czar, both of their abilities trigger when they become tapped, not necessarily when they become attacking. Now, they phrased them that way because enlist is a big mechanic in this set, so you can like enlist Czar and get their effect. But we do have the 3-color legends now, thanks to New Capenna, and we now have another cycle of uncommon or common even dual lands that have 2 land types. So if you're playing a 3-color deck, especially in these 3 colors, you get access to Rocco, Cabaretti, Caterer, who can tutor for anything. So if you're playing that, then you get to play Czar and Radha. Now, Radha, unfortunately, is just kind of bad even in Magical Christmas Land, but Czar starts getting good. Like if you had all 5 colors, if you had Nylea's presence down, then Czar is just going to be tapping and pumping up your team every time. So I think there could be a world where if you wanted to try and make this work, either doing Rocco or doing Lagrella, and we'll get to the blue-green domain one in a second, but Czar is maybe your payoff there because it is the best of these, but otherwise it's not very exciting to me.
I think the green black one is the other one that maybe is a contender. I think they're bad.
Sure.
So, but like it does something, and yeah, we'll talk about the other ones. The other one is green, white,
Queen,
white.
Queen is cool, yeah.
Yeah, Queen Elenal of Rudok, green, white, elf noble. Her power and toughness are each equal to the number of creatures you control. If one or more creature tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus 1 white soldier creature token are created instead. She's awesome. That's like, I mean, like she kind of builds herself, like you're making a token strategy, but she does exactly what you want there, and maybe even better. Anytime it's like make X plus 1 is a card that I really love in general in Magic. And then she gets massive, and so either giving her evasion or just having an abyss in play for one opponent is like cool enough.
Well, and there's lots of good playable evasion, like obviously Rancor and like Armadillo Cloak, but like a card that I think is really spicy with her is Pollen Bright Wings, which is an uncommon 6-mana aura from the original Ravnica. It's a 6-mana aura that says enchanted creature has flying, and whenever enchanted creature deals combat damage to a player, create that many saprolings.
Oh, cool.
So she's like maybe a 5/5. You slap this on her, she flies, she hits somebody, makes 5 saprolings, she becomes
6.
a 10/10. Or 6, yeah.
Yeah, plus 1. Yeah, and the other one, she's an elf, right? Like, and that does offer specific. Yes, the white soldier tokens don't get to take advantage of that, but like there are very good white-green elf strategies here, and like that hurt both sides of them, where there's a bunch of really good white-green elf token making strategies that you can take advantage of. Then you create a lords for them that then she also gets to take advantage of, both wanting to gum the board up with Land of War elf effects while also having the tokens and the token outlets to spend that mana on. So yeah, I think Queen Elenel is definitely one of the more exciting ones.
Yeah.
And honestly, we missed it in our modern review, but I think she's maybe underrated her. I think double white is pretty rough for modern. If she was green white versus white green white, if she was green white versus green white, I think there even is modern potential.
Right. Or if she was a human that made human tokens, she might be more interesting.
Yep. The one day, like Soldier, I think Soldier is like top 3 most common creature types in the game. So like it's not like eventually the right lords or benefits for Soldiers get created, but we're a while away from there. So we already did black white. So the next color combo. Oh, so the best of those I think is Queen Elenel.
Yeah, definitely.
Blue red.
Now we're on to the is it ones. Yeah.
So Balmore. So that is the end of the box offers, right?
Yes, so those were our 5. We did them.
So we have Balmore, Battle Mage Captain, blue-red, legendary creature, bird wizard, also high on the most common creature type lists. 1/3.
Both of those.
Flying. Both of them, yeah. Flying, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain trample in a turn. This card is bonkers.
This card is so good. So we already had a card that was like this, but weaker. In Adeline Adeliz the Cinder Wind from original Dominaria. She cost 1 more. She had haste, but she only pumped up your wizards and she did not give them trample. Giving trample is a game changer here. I mean, her also costing just 2 mana, so like you don't even have to lament that she doesn't have haste. Like the turn you're going to go off, it's just 2 more mana to start.
I don't think there's a single word on Adeliz that's not worse than Balmore, other than maybe she has 2 power versus 1 power.
Yeah, which is Balmore is a straight upgrade. If you're playing Adeliz the Cinder Wind, you put it in the 99 and you put Balmore in your command zone. But like, man, the trample is so huge because previously we didn't have a thing that made like Kiln Fiend and some of these other guys playable. Like Kiln Fiend is strong in something like Modern, where there aren't going to be a lot of blockers.
Standard.
But there was a time when Kiln Fiend was playable. But like now Kiln Fiend can be good again. And in fact, there is a Kiln Fiend with kicker that lets you rebuy an instant or sorcery that's in this set that I think is really exciting to put in this.
There's the 2/1 flyer that for 2 that has red kicker, like discard your hand, draw 3 cards. Like that's a wizard, I think, too. Like there's a lot of really cool blue-red cards.
There's also there's the dwarf wizard that already has trample. It's just a 2 mana 1/2, but gets a counter every time you cast an instant or sorcery.
Well, like wizard
Electrostatic
doesn't matter here, right? Just like play token making instants and sorceries, and you're good.
Yeah. Now anything that makes flyers, especially, but because they are trample, like making just goblin tokens, like goblin fodder is good because on the turns where you're going off, it's just 2 mana to give +1/+0 and trample to everything. But on the turns when you're building up resources, it gives you 2 things to carry it.
Yeah.
I especially love that this makes Goblin Wizardry, which is a pet card I've wanted to make work for a while. That's a 4 mana instant that makes 2 Goblin Wizards that both have prowess.
Well, if you have a way to give like goblin tokens haste, like there's a really, really funny storm list, right? That's just playing Empty the Warrens with Balmore.
Oh yeah, well
haste.
Well, Goblin War Chief will give them all haste.
Like this might be the
last day, first day of class. Yeah, first day of class is where it's at here.
Oh yeah,
it's just 2 mana. All creatures that enter the battlefield get a +1/+1 counter and gain haste. So you just start your turn by going first day of class, and then you're like just storming off. You're doing Hordling Outburst.
The Warrens win.
Yeah.
Also, speaking of like the make 2/1 goblins, there's the dinosaur one that makes a haste dinosaur and a non-haste dinosaur as well. That's like really good here. I think there's like 17 different ways to build this deck. I think it's super open-ended, and beyond all of that, it's a 2 mana legendary creature of the command zone. So like being able to get rid of this forever is going to be basically impossible.
Right. Yeah. I love that if I'm playing my Balmore deck and I sit down across the table from like your Torwalkie deck, I might be more cagey about when I cast Balmore, but the fact that Balmore costs just 2 mana, so I can just build up my forces, and then the turn I'm going to do it, start my turn by casting Balmore and then powering out.
The other blue-red commander is Najal, the Stormrunner. 2 blue-red, Ifrit Wizard, 5/4 legendary creature. You may cast sorcery spells until they have flash, and then when Najal, the Stormrunner, attacks, you may pay 2. If you do, when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. I think this card's really cool. I don't think it's as like bonkers as Balmore, but it's a totally different style deck. It does something really, really fun. It does do good things, like giving sorceries instant speed lets you kind of play the counter draw go game. A 5 mana 5/4 is not nothing as far as a threat goes, and then when you attack, you get to get a lot of value off of that, regardless, even if they get blocked.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, this is another deck that I feel good about playing Lightning Bolt in. But yeah, this is the first time we get this effect of your sorcery spells have flash in Artisan. You don't get a lot of gains flash in Artisan. I mean, that's the thing that made the original Raph Capashen pretty exciting in the format, because he gives all your artifacts and legendaries flash. So Najal is cool there. I remember Najal was spoiled before Balmore, and we were all super hyped on it. And then Balmore came out and just just look at that guy.
I guess this is the spell I should be playing with.
But yeah, there's definitely neat things that Najal can do. And like you said, it's a different deck than Balmore. So I kind of appreciate that they don't step on each other's toes.
Right. Just
But
being able to copy instants and sorceries is a pretty powerful effect. Now there is the that effect already exists and is maybe at a better rate. It's debatable. There's Radha, right? No, not Radha. The orc, I think she is from the Prismari.
Yes, the Prismari student whose
Like
name I
2 mana,
forget.
return it to your hand to copy an instant
Rionia
sorcery you control.
Yeah.
But I think the giving instants and sorceries flash and then getting that a benefit on top of it does make it competitive and for being 5 mana. That's like the only reason it would be. Plus, you get to keep doing it. You don't have to rebuy it. Okay, I've talked myself into Najal maybe actually just being better than that
I think they're two different kinds of things because she, whatever her name is, the student, she kind of is fine with sitting back and like making your big turn really gnarly, whereas Najal is kind of more Voltron-y, right? Like you want Najal to be able to like get through. You don't want them to die when you have to attack, and it allows you to lean into sorcery spells. Like it would definitely for me be a deck that I lean into the power of casting sorcery spells in my opponent's turns or casting them during combat. I haven't taken a lot of look, but I bet there's a lot of sorceries that are just messed up if you could cast them during your opponent's turns.
Sure. Blue-red, I think we're both on Balmore being the stronger of the two, but into black-green. So first is Bartok the Bone Rattler. 4 black-green for a Troll Shaman 4/4. This is the black-green domain. Domain when Bartok the Bone Rattle enters the battlefield. If you cast it, choose target creature card in your graveyard. Return that card to the battlefield if its mana value is less than or equal to the number of basic lands among lands you control. Otherwise, put it into your hand. So I think that a Gravedigger that can reanimate stuff like a Spore Frog in this format isn't to be shaken. It is only when it enters the battlefield. So you have to figure out ways to like blink it or have it be recastable.
But it's only when you cast it. It says if you cast it.
Okay, cast it. So it's only if you cast it.
That's an unfortunate thing.
There are a few green, uncommon, and common creatures that have the cost of return this to your hand at the beginning. Return a creature to your hand at the beginning of your upkeep.
Mm-hmm.
There's like 3 good ones. I have them in my Varus deck, actually.
I guess that's true. Yeah, like Roaring Primadox and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess that's kind of cool that you can play it like a Marin, like a really powered down Artisan Marin, because you get 1 reanimate a turn.
Yeah, I think that's like the one reason this is interesting is that doesn't really exist in the format that I know of, and this gives you an alternative to recreate that deck in the format. And you have to be creative, right? But that's fine to me. Artisan is one of the places where you kind of get to do that. You can lean into, okay, I'm gonna like have a lot of really powerful 2-drops and 1-drops that I want to be able to reanimate, like a Spore Frog or the one that you can use, the Caustic Caterpillar, right? Like there's like cool stuff like that you can rebuy, and then you have ways to get domain up, which we've talked about, and then you just play.
Yeah, you are in black, so you get to play a lot more tutors, so you can tutor up that Nylea's Presence that is so clutch to turn these domain things on. And there are some artifacts like Navigator's Compass and stuff that can be played in any of these domain decks that can help you fix manas. Also, there's an uncommon land from Conflux that taps to make a land any basic land type. So there's a couple ways you can do this in any of these color combinations. And so, yeah, it's true that if you wanted to, you could play and like use your Demonic Tutor to go get Nylea's Presence, and now Bartok is always going to reanimate things that cost 5 or less. And so you could set up an interesting.
If worst case scenario, if you just have like a 6-drop in your graveyard or a 4-drop, you can just put that into your hand, right? It's not like it's you either get the reanimation with domain or not. It's you can do the other Hat of Marin, which is just like rebuy the spells, which I think is often good enough depending on what you're trying to get back. So I think that Bartok to me as a like legendary Gravedigger that sometimes can reanimate things, that if you build around it correctly, you can do some really cool stuff. It's very mana intensive, but is in maybe the best color combo in Artisan to be doing mana intensive things. Like green black can produce a lot of mana. Specifically, Steve is available for this deck and is really good with this card. And so I think that's pretty cool. I do think the next one, Spawn of Turg, black, green, legendary creature, frog, beast. Spawn of Turg's power is equal to the number of land cards in your graveyard. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may put that card into your graveyard. You may black, green, sacrifice a land. You gain 2 life. I think this card's also great. The one thing holding this back is just there are not that many. Like, a lot of the land strategy cards and a lot of good lands to do land strategy things with are at rare. They're not at common, uncommon. So there is a little bit of a limitation there. But
so
yeah,
so this year has been a big year for black-green self-mill as a strategy that they've heavily pushed a lot as draft strategies. So they've shown up in our black common and uncommon. So several of the legends in Baldur's Gate dealt with this. And so being able to self-mill and fill up your graveyard is quickly becoming like what black-green does at common and uncommon. So it is cool that you can play a lot of dredge cards. You can power dump a ton of your library into your graveyard, and your graveyard, if built properly, can be essentially milling cards can be essentially like drawing a card if your deck is built properly. A lot of green's regrowth effects, like regrowth itself, is uncommon. There's a lot of uncommon effects that let you do that. And there are now a lot of cards that let you then play lands and stuff out of your yard that got printed this year. So I don't know if Urg is better than, say, like Kaga, which was the Golgari one in Baldur's Gate, that when it attacks, you mill some cards and then you can play a card that got milled this turn. So it's sort of like a little.
I think Urk is better to me. Like, first off, 3 mana is a big win. The fact that it has the my power gets big, I eventually become the Abyss, or if you give me any evasion, I'm going to just start killing people, especially commander damage wise, right? The fact that it basically gives you a scry every turn is not to be laughed at, and that scry also is sometimes draw 2 cards a turn. In a dedicated land deck strategy, either putting lands in your graveyard that you want to go there, or cards that you want there that have flashback, or dredgers, like the 2 of the 4 best dredgers of all time. Actually, of the best.
Yeah, Stinky and Thug and Dark Blast are all.
Yeah. So the creature, the 2 mana, Golgari Thug, Stinkweed Imp, Dark Blast, and Darkmoor Salvage are all common and uncommon. You don't get
Darkmoor Salvage is obviously a super strong one in Urg.
Yes. So I think there's like
slap a Rancor right on Urg.
And it gets to work. Or a Whisper Silk Cloak, like, I think, which would be really good, and like just playing it in the deck because you can. I think it does a lot of really small things that are powerful, and you can take advantage of it even further. It has a little bit of a Psychotog ability too, right? Where you're just like, it's me versus you. We played a long game. Our other 2 opponents have died, and I'm just going to sack all my lands and kill you because you didn't block correctly, and you're tapped out, and I have just enough green-black mana to like sack the 4 lands that you thought you could take the damage, and I'm just like, ha.
Yeah. It's definitely the more interesting of the 2 of them. And if someone sat down across from me with an Urg Spawn of Turg deck, I would not. I'd be sweating a bit because I think he's deceptively stronger than he looks, and he looks pretty strong for our format.
So now we go to white red, which I think Urg is the better one. Though I'm here to say that I think Bartok is the best domain legendary of the 4, which is not a hard contest to win, but mostly because you can build around this. The +1/+1 counter to all creatures you control. There are better creatures in green-white in this format that can do +1/+1 counter strategies.
I concede that point to you. Yeah, I think this is. I think you're right. I think I forgot that Bartok was a Gravedigger at rate. I thought it had to reanimate or not. I didn't see that last line of text. So I agree with you now. Knowing that last line of text, Bartok is the best of the domain legends. But
and that's such a hard contest to win. It was really neck and neck. Just like the
because since they're literally all the worst of this entire legends pile we're all talking about, like the domain legends are the worst ones. I think
they're by far.
Yeah. So in Boros, we get Baird Arguvian Recruiter, another cheap legend. He costs red and a white for a 2/2 human soldier. At the beginning of your end step, if you control a creature with power greater than its base power, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token.
So the benefit here is it's 2 mana. If this was anything more than that, this card's bad. But at 2 mana for a 2/2 that you can just play and then start just generating 1/1 tokens as soon as you can put a +1/+1 counter or a bone split. Like, first off, any commander that makes Bonesaw playable is a commander that I love.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, slapping down the Bonesaw and getting it going definitely seems like the hotness. I mean, it's pretty sweet that, like, obviously Baird wants Skull Clamp, and Skull Clamp is a nice cheap way to get that thing going. I mean, the unfortunate thing is Boros has a lot of token making commanders, and so, but yeah, Baird, every time we see a 2 mana anything that makes tokens every turn, it's like, oh, this is sort of a Bitter Blossom.
Yeah. Well, this it has Bitter, like, I think this card,
and it's a soldier that makes soldiers, so Soldier Tribal obviously also pays off here.
Oh, sure, yeah, you get the. It's one of the things I like Tormod, right? Like, Tormod has the benefit of just like, oh, I get to play with zombie tribal cards without any effort. I'm not trying to do a zombie tribal deck. Just like, if there's a card that is good with zombies and then has tribal elements, I just get to play those for free. And Bard has the same thing where it's just like, oh, any soldier lord is going to be very good in Baird because you just are going to have a lot of soldiers, and giving +1/+1 to all soldiers is going to be more broken here than normal. And that's true with token strategies. I don't think, like, yes, red white has a bunch of token ones, but the freeness of the token making here, like the minimalness amount of effort to be able to accomplish it, is something that other ones don't have, right? It normally they're more expensive, or you're waiting toward 5 to be able to start turning it on in the format.
Yeah. So Baird works pretty well with Tori de Avenant, Fury Rider, costs 1 red white for a 3/3 human knight with vigilance and trample. When Tori de Avenant Fury Rider attacks, all other attacking creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Other red attacking creatures gain trample and untap other white attacking creatures. So she basically gives vigilance and trample to your other gold creatures, and because she gets +1/+1 to all your attackers at the beginning of your end step, and at least one of your attackers is still alive, Baird will trigger and make you a soldier.
So I do want to bring up really quickly before we continue, there actually aren't any. There are like partner and background red white combos that possibly can make tokens in red white, but none. The only one that's close is Quantorius. In fact, I think the only red white legendary creature in Artisan right now that makes tokens is Baird and Quantorius.
Well, so, I have a soft spot for Quintorius because it's an Artisan deck I have together that I love very much.
Oh yeah, but it's just a totally separate strategy.
Sure.
Like, how you make Quintorius work is not the way that you would go about making Baird work.
That's true. So that is surprising. That surprised me that effect is so rare. So way to go, Baird. That's cool.
Just recruiting our Arguvians
to
the Fury Rider.
So I don't know about you, but okay, so Tori plays in this space that Agris costs sort of played in, where, like, you definitely get the most benefit if you're playing a lot of Boros guys. It's sweet that she makes Baird a Vigilance Trample 3/3. And it's also interesting that the effect untaps each other white attacking creature you control. So if you attack with your Mother of Runes, which is normally like a terrible idea, but if you know you're swinging into somebody who shields down, you can poke in for 2 extra, and you're going to have your mom still untapped to do her thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty sweet that if you have a bunch of like spirit tokens that fly, having them have vigilance is pretty sweet. Being able to swing in, get your punches, and still have guys on defense. So Tori, I don't think Tori is setting the world on fire or anything. I think she's pretty interesting if you're playing a Boros attacks deck, because just being an uncommon anthem effect that is going to untap all of your soldiers and spirits and stuff like that, that's pretty cool. But yeah, actually I think Baird might be the more interesting of the two, just because he's so cheap and easy to turn on.
Baird does something that Boros does do, but not like My problem with Tori is like a great example of like what Boros commanders did for 10 years of command, or 25 years of Commander's history, where collectively the world was like, Boros is the worst color combo in the format because this sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And Artisan doesn't make that better. It's not like being aggressive is a stronger strategy in this format than it is in regular Commander. You don't have as many ways to like go over the top. So I do think that's the limitation here. Tori in a deck like Baird, or if you wanted to do like the Naya domain deck you were talking about, and maybe just like taking advantage of like different legendary creatures there could be interesting. But I think,
well, I think granting trample to your entire team of red guys is not to be overlooked. Like I'm definitely playtesting Tori in my Quintorius deck because Quintorius is really good at making a bunch of 4/2 spirits, but they don't have any sort of evasion. So Tori swinging in makes them all 5/3s with trample and vigilance. So I'm excited about what she can do in the 99. I care less about her as a commander, but she does encourage you to play specifically Boros cards.
Correct.
Because you want to get both of the effects. And so that's kind of fun. She's kind of like an uncommon version of General Ferris Rockerick in that way.
And she is the only commander in Boros right now that's not one of the partner or background ones that does encourage attacking like this, just because most of those are rare. So it is for this format a new style of commander. It just is a strategy that I don't love. But it's nice to have stuff out also, because there's just a lot of equipment ones, right? There's like 4 different equipment uncommon Boros ones. So opening up strategies, the other things is really important, which these both do. Now on to the last color combo and the last 2 legendary creatures for tonight. We have Niall Avazao Aeronaut, 2 green-blue, legendary creature elf scout, flying, domain. Whenever they deal combat damage to a player, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. Put one of them on top of your library and the rest on the bottom in random order. Then if there are 5 or more basic land types among lands you control, draw a card 2/4 of 4 mana flying elf scout that lets you scry for 2.
This
bad.
So this card is disappointing to me on multiple levels. One, it has the word Avazoa in its name, and it implies what it is, but you don't see the Avazoa. So Magic players, Avazoas are flying jellyfish things. You see sort of its tentacles. I guess you see some of them floating in the background.
Yeah.
But like, I love the idea of an elf that is using a floating jellyfish thing as like a blimp or a hot air balloon. But the angle that we see, we only just see its tentacles hanging down.
Yep.
Okay, so the thing that really, really annoys me here is domain is easiest to pull off in our format in blue. There are a lot of blue effects that change the basic land types of lands. There's just a lot of creatures that tap to make land types, various land types. So if you were going to do domain in our format where there aren't 5 color things, the easiest color to do it in is blue. And the worst, I think this is maybe the worst one. I mean, it's up there with Radha. They're both pretty bad. But yeah, so Nail just kind of peeking. I mean, I guess it helps you dig for your, but even the payoff, if you have 5 basic land types, you get to impulse for 5 when you hit. And she's like a 2/4 for 4. Like, I don't know, she's just so bad.
I think if you can turn it on, it's a fine ability, but it's so much worse than any of the other blue-green options I think in the format. And the amount of effort to do it is so much higher. I think this is the worst. This might be a competition for worst card in the set.
Would it have been so bad if no matter what you drew a card after looking at the lands, after looking at the cards? It would have just been a legendary Thieving Magpie that's like better than Thieving Magpie, but requires 2 colors.
And 4 mana. Versus
Thieving
3.
Magpie's a 4 mana.
Oh, isn't Thieving Magpie 3? I'm thinking of something else. Never mind. Yeah, continue.
Ophidian is 3. Thieving Magpie is 4, so it can fly.
Yeah.
So I whatever. We've spent too much time talking about this bad card. It's bad. It sucks.
So previous, I think like one of the what people would say is one of the worst options for blue green in the format is which I disagree with, to be honest, but Corlessa Scale Slinger. So green blue Dragon Bard 1/4. You may look.
Oh no, that one's so much more exciting than this card.
Yeah, because just the ability to look at the top of card of your library at any time is so much more interesting and abusable than what
yeah.
is doing.
Plus
you get to
thankfully, yeah, and it's a 2-mana. Like, I love myself a 2-mana legend.
Yeah. All right, so the last last legendary we're going to be talking about, Return of the Queen. The first card when people enter Artisan, they're like, oh, that card's got to be broken, right? That's the card that needs to be banned first. Which, have
you guys banned Tatiovo yet?
Yeah. It's like the most common question. Tatiovo, Steward of the Tides. And this is for the original. So for those who don't know, and hopefully it's on screen, this is a return of a character. Tatiovo was in the last Dominaria set and is 3 blue, green, and whenever you play a landfall, draw a card, gain a life. Which in regular Commander is very powerful. in
Artisan is good.
But you don't have Fetchlands. So when you don't have
Fetchlands, you don't have Exploration and Azusa, you don't have those extra land drop effects either. Ramp spells are still good. I mean, it's still great to ramp and growth and draw a card, or cultivate and draw a card. But
she is good. She's not broken. But Tatiovo, Steward of the Tides, Merfolk Druid, legendary creature, 3/3 for green, blue. Land creatures you control have flying. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if you control 7 or more lands, up to 1 target land you control becomes a 3/3 elemental, 3/3 elemental creature with haste. It's still a land. I just love that this is like a strategy that doesn't exist in Artisan that can be very powerful. There's a lot of weird, cool cards that turn lands into creatures, including like the Genjus and the Rith Awakener, and there's even like some allies that do some cool stuff. There's just like a bunch of cool things you can do with this. That's fun. I mean, she is worse than regular Tatiovo, but she is a different style of commander that is leaning into a different type of strategy that is fun.
It's cool that this Tatiovo plays very well with the old Tatiovo. So if you played one of them as your commander, the other one would definitely be in your 99, because this gives 5-mana Tatiovo a good win condition. I mean, once you're up to 7 or more lands, you don't care if you lose some lands to a board wipe. Like, you've 7 lands, you're cooking with gas. And given them all flying, like, they become a lot harder to deal with.
I do think that if I'm choosing, partially from an entertainment perspective, I think I'm much more interested in playing this Tatiovo with original Tatiovo in the 99 than the reverse. I think maybe regular Tatiovo wants this card in her 99 once in a while, but I think like this is the commander that you build around, where Tatiovo is a great card in that deck, right? Where like,
sure,
because this card wants a bunch of other cards that do similar things to take the most advantage of the fact that land creatures you control have flying, versus regular Tatiovo that like might want this ability but not always. And I do think, like as we mentioned with some of the other ones, the fact that this does break parity, the fact that it does give you a army of flying hard to kill creatures is valuable in this format, and something that you could do some cool stuff with.
Yeah. Yep. And this is a neat one. I don't think it's I think it's very cool. And yeah, like you said, having this as your commander instead of old Tatiovo, which, because she's quite a bugaboo in regular powered commander, having Steward of the Tides as your commander definitely keeps some of the heat off of you.
Yes. Regular Tatiovo falls definitely prey to, oh, you're playing the one, we're gonna kill you first, and it is not powerful enough to handle 3 players going after you in the way that it can do that in regular
commander.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Do you want to go over some non-legendary? We're now at an hour and 30 minutes,
So there were just a couple not legendary things that I just wanted to talk about, and we'll make it real quick. One of the big things is dual lands. We now have another cycle of dual lands. We previously had the snow duels, and when we say dual land, we mean ones that have 2 land types on them. And so this is pretty exciting for effects like Farseek and other cards that just specifically call out land types.
And there are fetch lands in this format. I kind of misspoke earlier. There is the original tapped fetch lands. They enter the battlefield tap, you untap with them, and then you can do the fetch land thing. In this format, that means you're spending that land drop to have a tapped land twice, but you can always just get, if you don't want to go get one of the dual lands, you can get a basic with it. So it does just act as a normal tapped mana source if you needed to, or it can just be like god tier fixing if you have the ability to go 2 turns with a tapped land entering play. You do also get the really before we continue past the lands, I do want to bring up, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe button as always. Also, if you are planning on going to MTG Summit, we parts of the cast, me, Ben, are going to be going. If you use the code Kess, Kess, if you're going to go and you buy passes, use the code Kess. It helps get us there and helps get you a discount. I believe you get a decent discount off of it as well. I'm going to actually be at some point in the next month on Kingdoms TV's YouTube channel, actually playing the Torwaki deck that I have against regular commander decks. I'm taking a knife to a gunfight, but it's a knife that it throws knives, hopefully infected ones. And I guess those are called arrows, and he's an archer. So maybe I should have gone with taking a bow and arrow set to a gunfight.
Yeah, and I wouldn't completely bet against an archer in a gunfight.
Yeah. Especially because it has oh, you're the archer, and there's 2 guys with guns. I'm going to focus on the gun people, and they're just like, yeah. Hey, Hawkeye is a major and superhero character in a world with laser vision, not even just guns.
I looking over the other commons and uncommons that were in the set that don't interest me in ways that I think really need to be talked about. The legends are definitely a lot more interesting, but there were a lot of cool new commons and uncommons in the set as usual. I think the standout non-legendary one for me is Tear Asunder, which is it's a cost a green and a 1 for a instant that exiles target artifact or enchantment, which is already an upgrade over Naturalize, but it has Kicker 1 and a black. If this spell was kicked, exile target non-land permanent instead. So for 4 mana, this can hit anything. For 2 mana, it hits an artifact or enchantment, and it exiles it, which is super huge. So, I mean, this card just seems like an auto-include in any Golgari deck in Artisan, and strong argument for it to be an auto-consider in all Golgari decks and Commander, period. Because it's just so flexible, and being able to exile, like in regular powered Commander, be able to exile gods or some of these indestructible equipments for just 2 mana seems super sweet, and the ability to kick it up to take care of other problematic permanents just seem really huge.
Oh yeah,
but there's a whole cycle of these off-color kicker spells, and a lot of them are just really, really good.
I was gonna say that I like Kicker so much more in this set than I did in Dominaria the last time. In fact, I've kind of always not liked Kicker as a mechanic. If you're going to pick the gold standard mechanics, flashback, Kicker, cycling, Kicker is by far my least favorite. And this is maybe the first set where I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like a 2/1 flyer that you can kick to draw cards, discard cards, the black green, the disenchant that lets you kill a full thing for 4 mana, that you mentioned. So there's definitely some really cool ones out there that I'm pretty hyped for.
Yep, definitely keep an eye on that whole kicker cycle, because I'm looking at it here, 7 of the cards that I was like, oh, this card's really interesting, are these off-color kicker cards. So there's a lot of cool toys for that. And maybe some point we will be able to talk about, maybe after Unstable comes out, we can talk about the common and uncommon cards that both Unstable and these Warhammer 40k decks added, because Warhammer 40k is, I mean, it's everything about it looks pretty cool, and then there are a lot of new common and uncommon cards, and I'm like, oh wow, that's very cool.
there's so many new cool stuff. I like the Warhammer set all on its own is really cool. And I'm really excited about all of the different stuff, especially our preview card that we previewed last week from Unfinity. I've definitely seen cards from it since we're recording this 3 weeks at a time.
Yeah. So we've technically already previewed that that Unfinity card, right?
Yeah, it's so cool.
So we can talk about it.
Yeah,
I feel like you should be required to call a friend who does not play Magic.
Oh, sure.
Like, I definitely will have my wife as like a default person to call if I get that card. Because I love that in the reminder text, it says, do not explain anything else. Like one of the lines of text is like, phone a friend and ask them to choose one of these 4. Do not explain anything else. And I feel like there should be a call someone who does not play Magic and ask them this.
Oh yeah, I think like
call your mom and ask her, Mom, do I want to draw 3 cards?
It's by far the best option. I think the one thing is you might be bothering Laura every time you call her.
Yeah.
But it's a really cool. I really like the design of it. I think it's like, because when we previewed it, we didn't do like a breakdown. So it definitely is like more of an interesting take on a charm spell than like we've seen, and I think it's like really good use of like the unstable technology. It's funny that we got an unstable card, because I would say that multiple levels of us aren't unstable or like uncard, like acorn card type content creators, but I was really hyped about. I think honestly the reason we got it is because Ben does trivia. It's like a reference to Ben doing trivia
phone
content.
A friend.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's my hot take is it's Ben themed.
We see you, wizards. We see you connecting the dots.
All right. Well, so once again, thank you so much, Marshall. If you want to check out Artisan, we do have the Discord linked below. There's a ton of great content there. Or if you just want to join the Facebook or the Reddit, we have all of them. If you go to ArtisanCommander.com, there's a link to all of the different social places you can follow and join. The Discord is by far the most popular, but the Facebook and the Reddit, there's stuff happening there as well. So make sure to check it out. We'd love to hear once again which unset cards, which Unfinity cards you're most excited by, both for black border play, because there's a bunch of black border ones, or ones that you want to maybe see become black border, or a mechanic you want to explore in the future, or Artisan Commanders. There's a bunch of uncommon. We know now, recording this in the future, that there is uncommon commanders out there. So make sure to check all of that out, and please comment below. So thank you so much. And Marshall, any shout outs you want to do before we head out?
No, just keep listening to the MMcast, brought to you by Time Traveler Media, and definitely check out, if I had to recommend another one, we are also producing a show called The Doctor's Art, which is conversations between people in the medical field talking about this particular moment in medicine, which, it's a pretty tense time, dealing with COVID, dealing with there's a lot of stresses going on clinicians in the world. So it's a lot of interesting, thoughtful talks with doctors, nurses, administrators, brought to you from the folks at Stanford Medical School. So I'm really proud of the project. I think we've got a lot of cool things going on there. So The Doctor's Art is the name of that podcast.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds really, really amazing. Thanks everyone. And we'll talk to you all next week.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.